Good morning, guys, and welcome to this episode of Action Gospel. We've been, this is part three of our series through the book of Job. Before we get started on this, I'm going to go ahead and just do a real quick summary of what we've hit on so far. So, we've been breaking the book of Job down into scenes, like you would see in a movie. So, scene one, and we were talking about who Job is and what does he own. What are his worldly possessions really? What does his family look like? What does his day-to-day life look like? Then in scene two, we see Satan and God talking about Job, and the end all be all of that is that God grants Satan permission to go and take all of Job's worldly possessions away, and we see in scene three, Job losing all of his worldly possessions, and all of his children as well. And then, and we see that at the end of all of that, Job's response to it and how he basically, in a nutshell, says, "The God gave me all this stuff; He can take it away, and may God be praised through all of this." We see his response like that. And then we see again Satan talking to God, saying, "Okay, he didn't do what I thought he was going to do when he took his worldly things away, but wait, do something to him physically." And God grants him that permission as long as he doesn't kill Job. And so in scene 5, we see that Job gets all of these sores, and these very painful sores. We see that again, Job glorifies and praises God through all of this. And then at the end of chapter 2, in scene 6, we see that 3 of Job's friends come to console and mourn with Job. And where we left off is that they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights. No one said a word to him, because they saw how great his suffering was. And so to get into chapter 3 today, I've got a guest with us today. This is Everett Sanchez. He is a friend from the church that I go to here. He does a lot with one of our Hispanic services and ministries. So I brought him in today to talk with us through. He'll be with us for the next 2 episodes as we go through these 2 episodes. So welcome, Everett, to
what's going on? Thank you for having me.
Action Gospel. So yeah, let's get into this. So Job 3.
Yes.
Wow. Basically, when I was reading this, it was like, this man hates himself.
yeah, of course. I mean, there was I was reading it just this morning, just making sure I covered all the little corners of everything that I thought it was happening in this part of the world. And it was very very sad, actually, because I mean, you start off with the idea that he doesn't want to curse God. That's very clear. He doesn't want to put any blame on God. You get that from the first 2 chapters. And then his friends are there sitting around with him, being sad with him. And then the first line starts off with, "He cursed the day of his birth." It's one of those things where it's like, as a society today, we celebrate the day of our births,
Mm-hmm.
and probably wasn't his birthday that day,
Mm-hmm.
but he's just sitting there like, you know what, that day sucked.
Yeah.
That was the worst day in the world.
Yeah. And when you really look at the structure of Job 3, I was able to break it down into 2 or 3 different little sections. He starts off just, like you said, cursing the day of his birth.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about how he wants that day to cease to exist.
Yeah.
He wants people that curse days to curse that day. He wants it to be the darkest day, and he wanted that day to just go into darkness and never come out.
Mm-hmm.
And then down in like where is that verse 11, down through that area, he's talking about how why didn't he just die when he was born? Why were there the knees and to receive me, and breast that I may be nursed. About how he just doesn't understand why he could have just died on that day.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be going through some incredibly just unmanageable suffering. 'Cause, I mean, you lost your children, you lost your land, you lost your family, and now your body's covered in these painful sores. You know, and it's at least 7 days and 7 nights of this.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not like it was the next day. Like, no, I mean, his friends clearly sat there for 7 days and 7 nights
Yeah.
weeping with him. So I mean, at this point, you have to be going through something incredibly depressing and just so much pain. Because I mean, you were a jolly guy, you had everything, you had
Yeah.
it all, and now all of a sudden you've got nothing in the span of at least 7 days.
Yeah. And I think a really cool way, or a good way of looking at this and trying to relate it to the world today, is in a way that we can comprehend, is like pretending that we are the Bill Gates of the world almost,
Sure.
and that in a couple of hours he loses literally everything, and then is covered in
Painful sores.
painful sores. What do you think that would do to a person that is in a situation similar to like Bill Gates, who has quite literally everything?
Yeah.
He can go out and do whatever he really wants to do. He has that
Mhm.
ability to fall from that to basically falling all the way down to being a homeless person is kind of how, I guess, in a way for us to comprehend that. That's the kind of pain.
Yeah, or even like even in times like now, like how we're going through a pandemic where
Yeah.
people had jobs and people were working, 5 days a week or maybe even 6-7 days a week, and all of a sudden go to nothing.
Yeah.
Now you're struggling. You didn't get everything taken away from you, but you can kind of see how the world is collapsed in a sense where
Yeah.
that is one of the situations that we're facing where, okay, now we're struggling to get money to pay our rent because that for some reason never stops. Bills don't stop coming in.
Yeah.
So we still have to find these difficult ways or these just, I guess, more intelligent ways to earn what we need in that position. So we're a little bit desperate, but I don't think a lot of us are anywhere close to what Job is going through.
Yeah, I think most of us would, in our society today, I think a good portion of us would be considering alternate routes of leaving this world.
Oh, for sure.
For sure.
I mean, there was cases in New York like that too.
Yeah, where
People were just committing voluntarily.
you can say suicide. I don't
okay.
think I don't
All
think YouTube is gonna knock me off for that.
Okay, we're not gonna get demonetized for it.
I'm not monetized anyway, so.
So basically, suicide has been a very big option for a lot of these people that are not having ways to provide for themselves.
Yeah.
And in this case, I don't see Job getting there. I think
Yeah.
he really just dislikes himself.
Yeah, and I think that's important to point out, is that I cannot remember a spot in the book of Job where you see him contemplating that.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons that I say that most of, in today's society, I would venture a guess that 90% of people would be considering that, not even getting close to the kind of pain that this man is suffering. I think the biggest thing that we take out of chapter 3 is he's expressing the amount of pain that he is in, both physically and mentally, through cursing himself, which again is not what most of us would do.
No, of course not.
And that's something else to look at, is that when any of us, some of us, will we get in a car accident, or like, God, why in the heck did you let that happen?
Sure. Yeah.
And Job is a little bit more pain than a car accident, and is sitting here going, why am I here? Cursing himself, and again, very clearly not taking any of this out on God, which is commendable for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of people blame God for the things that they're going through when they don't know that it's not God doing it to you. I mean, it's sure maybe God allows it as to see where you're at in your faith, but most of the time it's really not God doing it. God would hate to see you suffer.
Yeah.
You know, that's not the point of God.
Mm-hmm.
The point of God is to just to love.
Yeah.
To love on you, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
for people to blame him is just crazy.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean that's for people that do believe. For the people that maybe not have their faith as strong as others, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe just don't believe in general. That's why maybe they develop some sort of atheistic mentality where, you know,
Mhm.
okay, God is only allowing this to happen to his people, then obviously there's no God. I can't stand for there to be
Yeah.
a God who's like that. So
Yeah.
you have
And
that
starts
situation.
entering into the whole lion's den
Sure.
thing.
Yeah.
Why do good things happen to bad people?
Well, he actually-
which is definitely this
Yeah.
book.
He actually
Um,
mentions it in the end of this chapter 3. Where is it? It says, I'll start at 20. It says, "Why does God let me live when life is miserable and so bitter? I keep longing for death more than I would seek a valuable treasure. Nothing could make me happier than to be in the grave. Why do I go on living when God has me surrounded and I can't see the road? Moaning and groaning are my food and drink, and my worst fears have all come true. I have no peace of rest, only troubles and worries. Why do I feel like I missed it?" It's somewhere in here.
That's an awesome section. Anyway,
It really is.
Like
it
that's
really is. Let's see. Wow. Maybe it's in my other Bible.
yeah, but that is definitely like a big this when people talk about like do bad things happen to good people. Most of the time you hear Daniel in the lion's den. He was a good man. Why did God allow him to be thrown in the lion's den?
Yeah.
And then of course we know the end. We know what happens.
Yeah.
But Job is another great example that of that. Why does God allow this kind of stuff to happen? And I think in Job is particularly interesting because of the conversations that we see between Satan and God.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big part of this is how God is, in a way, waging his bets on Job, saying, Job isn't going to curse me. He will praise me through all this. He is a, what is it he says? Have you
Considered my son Job.
Yeah, consider my servant Job. There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. And Satan is just sitting here saying, yeah, does Job fear God for nothing?
Mm-hmm.
Have you put a hedge around him? Which is, I like that. Have you put a hedge around him? Because we see that in that section that you just talked about. And take and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. There's a lot of really cool little tie-ins that go throughout this whole book.
Yeah.
That work like that. So we see in 3 that Job is just ripping himself apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Digging a deeper hole for himself.
Yeah. And then in chapter 4, his first friend, I'm bad at these names, Eliphaz,
Sure.
the Temanite? We'll say that's his name.
I'm just gonna say he was human.
That one human that's
That
name
one
started with an E.
Eliphaz, the homie Eliphaz.
The homie Eliphaz. Yeah, we'll start with that. And he's sitting here, and we see this is a running thing throughout all of this book.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to comfort Job in a way. He says, if someone ventures a word with you, will you be impatient? How do you keep from speaking? Let me see. Where is it? There's a... Really, he's just kind of throwing out, okay, what have you got to have done something
Mm-hmm.
to deserve this? God doesn't just punish a good man. No, you have to have sinned in some way to have deserved this.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we see your words have supported those who stumble. You have strengthened faltering faltering knees. He's just throwing all of these different. Did you do this? Did you do this? Could you done this? And then talks about how bad these different things are. And then like verse 7 and 4, you see, consider now who being innocent have ever perished, where were the upright ever destroyed? That kind of, there's no way you're just a blameless good guy, because you have to have done something to deserved all of this. And really that goes all the way through. I mean, this man's long-winded. He can talk for a really long time, because we see his conversation goes all the way through 5.
Your homie Eliphaz, man, that dude be talking.
Oh yeah,
He gossips a lot.
oh yeah. Well, Job responds with another 3 chapters, but yeah, so we see Eliphaz is here sitting, saying all this stuff like, okay, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? Could you have done that? Because if you've done this, then you definitely deserve it. Or if you've done this, you've definitely deserved it. And we'll see in the next episode, 'cause we'll get into 6 and 7, Job's reply to all of this. But here's the teaser. We'll see Job's response to all of this, which I think is really interesting. And I like the way he says his response. But yeah, I mean, throughout the whole book, I think it's safe to say throughout the entire book of Job, when we're having these, I mean, 90% of this book is just the conversation between these 4 guys. And I would venture to say that 90% of that conversation is them saying, well, what did you do wrong?
Yeah.
And Job's response going, I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
I've praised God. I've given the sacrifices I need to give. I gave more sacrifices than I probably should have. I mean, we see in the beginning of the book that anytime his kids went off to party, he was sacrificing for each one of them just in case they sinned.
Yeah.
He didn't know whether they sinned or not. He was like, if they did, we're going to take care of it.
Yeah, and it wasn't just like every time they went to a party. It was just like just in case. Like it was a routine for him every day.
Yeah, it was an everyday kind of routine where he was just like, I don't know if they sinned,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm going to go ahead and offer the sacrifice just in case they did. He was definitely a very godly man, I would say. A man after God's own heart. And, and that really, without going into the detail of the rest of the book, that really is what we see throughout the rest of this book is that conversation back and forth between Job and these 3 friends saying, what did you do? Because you got to have done something. And Job's response saying, no, I don't know what I did.
Yeah, it's kind of like if we were in high school, it'd be just a constant peer pressure.
Mm-hmm.
From friends telling you to do something, because you also see them trying to convince Job to just kind of, all right, man, you've held on this long, you might as well just say, to heck with it.
Mm-hmm.
God is evil or whatever, so it's that peer pressure that you see from these 3 friends that I'm assuming are very close friends to Job.
Considering where they came from. If you look at where their different areas that they live in and look at that on a map, they didn't just oh look, neighbor's hurting.
Yeah.
It was, oh my goodness, neighbors. Someone across the country that I know needs help. Let's go over there.
Behind
a
lot of their stuff.
Yeah.
To be with him through his suffering. So I mean that just shows like, okay, these are close friends. These are people that you trust or that you just have good faith in.
Yeah.
For being there, and the next thing you know, they're just telling you to go against what you believe. So it's a huge conflict for Job right now, considering what he's just gone through, and now his friends are, telling him.
And I think that's an interesting another way to look through this book, because when we're looking through the books, we've got to find the messages that are in there.
Yeah.
The stories with the lessons to be learned, and that's definitely a big one. Is that again, these are close friends.
Yep.
To Job, and they're sitting here peer pressuring him into trying to peer pressure him into just listen. Understand this faith thing is big to you, but obviously this ain't worth it, dude.
Yeah.
You need to just turn away from this and find something else.
Yeah.
And throughout the whole time, Job is this is it.
It's all or nothing.
It's all or nothing. Yeah, this is definitely worth it for the continuing to glorify God. There's sometimes when I read through this book and I think of the like an interrogation almost. They're almost trying to get him just to confess to something.
Yeah. You kind of see that at the beginning because, I mean, you're hearing the homie Eliphaz is over here trying to tell him, like, okay, what did you do to deserve this? All right. So it's like now you start the process of trying to figure out why it's happening to you, which is how most of us really go through things. It's like, I got a speeding ticket years ago, and the whole time I'm sitting there waiting for like the police officer to come to my window. I'm like, what did I do? Like, you start that internal discussion with yourself.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Job's internal discussion is telling himself like to hold on to God, because I mean, even at the end of chapter 1, he says, we bring nothing at birth, we take nothing with us at death. The Lord only alone gives and takes. Praise the name of the Lord. So it's like he knows that God can give and can take. So he has that understanding that, okay, if God wants to take this away from me, then he can take it away just as he gave it to me. So now he's holding on to that, while his friends are telling him to, like, okay, let's figure this out. What did you do? Like their thought process is a lot more worldly, whereas when one has faith, sometimes things just show up out of nowhere. Yeah. I had one time where little story time. I had to pay for a ticket. Not a ticket, I'm sorry. I had to pay for surgery, and the surgery actually was it was a lot more money than I had. It was, I think it was like $1,200 at the time. And I remember going to just trying to see what finance options I could possibly give out. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, like, okay, you know what? I'll do whatever I can, and I'll leave the rest up to God. Because honestly, there's no possible way that I could pay for this straight out. So I remember, I think like a week later, 3 weeks before the surgery, I had a letter from my mom from the county of some county down somewhere in the south. And they were saying that this bail bondsman thing had expired, and the money was in line to come to me, because the person who the money was going to go to, he moved away, and we called him, and he said, no, you can have it. And my mom was like, well, I can't have it because it's not my name, it's my son's name. And my mom calls me, she's like, hey, there's this check for you in the mail. And I was like, okay, cool. Why? I don't know why. This actually happened like 8 years ago when I like helped sign this guy for a bail to get him out of prison at one point. And I guess it expired, and the guy didn't want the money because he was in another country. And then came to me, and the exact amount was $1,200, and that helped pay for the surgery that I needed. So I mean, Job has this understanding that, okay, God can just give this whenever he wants to, and he can take it away whenever he wants to. There is that faith, that strong faith that he has for it. So his friends, I have to say, they don't have that same faith. Yeah. They can't have that understanding where it's like, okay, if God can give it to you and take it away just like that, then that's just it. He can just take it away.
It's a two-way road. He's going to, because I have similar experiences to what you were talking about, a little bit different circumstances, of course.
Yeah, of course.
But that same thing, that you don't know where that bill is going to get paid for. Yeah. You just continue having faith that God's going to take care of it and give you the money you need, or he's going to give you the situation that you need to get out of it, or whatever. Yeah. It is. And pretty consistently, it's right there when you need it. Yeah. Almost 100% of the time, the road that God wants you to take is very evident at the time that God wants it to be evident, I guess.
Yeah. You're at peace with it.
Yeah. It's one of those things that a lot of people that are in some of the situations that, I mean, the situation you're talking about, just their situation I've been in, that most people are going to sit there and go and stress for, some people stress for years trying to figure these things out. And and for those of us who are believers, and this is for the ones that aren't believers, but for the ones of us that are believers, where we can have a sense of peace knowing that God's going to take care of us through it all. So yeah, that's huge. Yeah, so we're going to go and wrap up this episode right here. And thank you, Ever, for being with us this one.
Yeah, no problem, man.
We'll
Thanks,
see you in the next episode with us. Awesome, guys. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Action Gospel. If you want to get in contact with us, you know the 3 ways. YouTube, comment on this video on YouTube. If you see this video on Facebook, comment there, or go to our Facebook page. Send us a message. We will get back in touch with you. Or if you've got you want to do a collaboration like this, or you've got a topic that you want us to talk about here on Action Gospel, go ahead and shoot us an email at actiongospeloffice@gmail.com. And thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of Action Gospel. God bless.